Great to see you all. Everyone doing well? It's a great group. Me too. Actually, this is a really great place for me to introduce today's special guest, Michael Pilla. I met Michael in London a few months ago. I was at an arts and culture networking event at the Royal Society of Arts, and Michael was sitting next to me. And we started talking, and he told me about his work doing branding for arts organizations. And through his company, I looked them up when I got back home, and I saw that he was doing some really great projects. But we've had since then some wonderful conversations about artist branding versus arts organizations branding. And I thought he had a lot of really interesting things to say. So I invited him here today to share it with all of us. And I am so grateful to welcome Michael as our special guest in the Working Artist Gathering. Michael, thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me. Really glad to be here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yay. Okay. So just a little bit about me. You could probably tell by the way I talk that I'm from New York City. I actually live 20 minutes east of New York City in a place called Tenafly, New Jersey. The name of my company is Clicks for Ticks. I actually have two companies. That's the arts wing of the company. The other wing is a general email digital marketing company called Pilla Creative Marketing, and my tagline there is no nonsense web design, which is sort of my approach to a lot of this. There's a lot of mythology, a lot of misunderstanding, a lot of bad information out there. So I always try to strip all that away and let's get to the point and get my clients up and running and hopefully making money as soon as possible. I've been doing this since the inception of the internet. So, I remember, AOL and the dot-com bust. I am one of those people who got laid off during the dot-com bust. That's how long I've been doing this. So I'm really, really well versed in this. I have spent my entire career as a designer, art director, creative director. So I sort of live, eat, and breathe, branding and creating marketing material. I've done work for nonprofit entertainment venues, for fairs, for various film festivals, jazz festivals, even for public art initiatives. So I've sort of come at this from a number of different angles, in addition to my regular work for small businesses. So anyway, all that I've hopefully condensed as much of that as possible into this presentation. And anyway, I hope you enjoy it. Here we go. Personal branding for artists. I like to say that branding is an art in itself. As I told you before, this is my company, Clicks for Ticks. It's drama-free branding for the arts, and I'll get into that later. So I want to start off with like I call a branding fable. Would you buy an incredibly expensive piece of modern art from this man? Would you? Just nod your head one way or the other. Well, how's about this man? Right? So this is basically, obviously it's Andy Warhol. Does everyone know who Andy Warhol is? I know it's been a while. But basically he's one of the most important artists of the 20th century. And he was as famous for being himself as he was for his art. So this is what he looked like in real life. This is where he grew up in Pittsburgh. He made his name as an illustrator. He specialized in shoe illustrations, of all things. And just as an aside, if anybody has seen the Beatles movie, the Beatles animated movie,
Yellow Submarine?
Yellow Submarine, correct. Yeah, Yellow Submarine. There's a shoe or several shoes in Yellow Submarine, and they were based on Andy Warhol's illustrations. So it's sort of an homage to Andy. So this is how we know him. This is obviously his work. He was basically one of the first artists to celebrate and identify celebrity culture. That's big where he comes into. And the reason he did things like soup cans and Brillo boxes, and those were the icons of our industrial age. So instead, if you were a painter in Holland, during the Renaissance, you did boats, you did items from across the thing, you did rich people, but now we do celebrities and we're doing consumer goods. So I don't know if that's a step forward or not, but that's where we are. So there's another artist Jean-Michel Basquiat, he's an African American. He actually tragically died very young of an overdose. But he was very big in the 80s. As you can see, his art was very, very individual. And he started as a graffiti artist. And he was also known for his personality. But unlike Warhol, his work was very, very political. He was sort of like a social activist through his art. Um, So interesting enough, they collaborated. You wouldn't think they'd be able to, but the two of them collaborated in the 1980s on a show. They had the same agent who brought them together. And it was a very, very successful show. And this stuff is, and actually, Basquiat's work sells for millions. I mean, his family is doing very well, basically, off of it. So, but the interesting thing is that he basically said that there was a play on Broadway a couple of years ago called Collaboration, which had to do with the two of them working together. And basically it was, people look at the old masters and says, I can't do that. But you look at a lot of modern art, especially Warhol's, and people go, well, what's the big deal? I can do that. I just haven't done it yet. And what they hit upon was that the value was no longer intrinsic in the art. The value, at least at their level, was in who they are, because they became mega celebrities. And regardless of what they did, that's where, you wanted a Warhol, even if it was just like you drew a circle on a napkin. Well, it's a Warhol, it's worth millions. So with that in mind, why? Why should artists invest the time, money in branding? Well, basically, it sets you apart, all right? And it sets you apart from the other artists. It lets people know immediately what you stand for without having to know about you. Again, separates from the other artists. You create your own aesthetic. So there's not like a society-wide agreement on what's good art and what isn't. So you have the opportunity to carve out your own space. And the two big benefits of this is obviously you create your separate identity, which always helps in sales. I mean, in any business, standing out and appealing to a specific niche or a specific target audience and targeting your message and your work to that audience is basically the quickest way or the best way to be successful. It's thanks to the internet, mass marketing doesn't really exist anymore. It's all about niche marketing, and it doesn't have to be a huge niche. It just has to be an identifiable group of people that you can reach out to. And if you focus your efforts there, what then happens is you create a bond with those people. So people are not buying your work. I mean, I'm sure as beautiful as it might be, but they're buying your work because they feel an emotional connection to you. And the same thing in regular marketing, but especially true here. People are buying your work because they like you, but they feel like you're part of them. So moving along, what are the elements of a successful brand? Well, on the inside, basically what you do, internally, you want to establish your core values. So, what are the principles? What is it that guides your work? Again, you want to define your niche. What category would you put your art in, or maybe you have your own category, and you want to develop a compelling story. You want to develop a narrative that people can relate to, people can latch on to, even beyond your work. And then as far as dealing with the public or dealing with the outsiders, you want to identify your target audience as narrowly as possible. You want to also create a visual identity, which includes your work, but it also includes all of your marketing material and anything you put out there. And then once you develop those other 5 items, you need to implement them. You need to bring them into the real world in a consistent way that's accessible and identifiable.
I want to go back for a second, if that's
Sure.
okay, and ask you a
Yeah.
question.
Sure.
The identifying your target audience.
Uh-huh.
A lot of artists that I work with, I ask about their target audience, and they'll say like everybody or rich people.
Yeah, right.
We all wish for that audience, but what? Why should you niche? Why should you make it smaller rather than larger?
Well, okay. First of all, there's tons of people out there doing things that are very close to what you're doing. And one of the advantages of internet marketing in general is you want to deal with people who are predisposed to doing business with you. So you're not starting from ground zero, and you're not basically putting out a message there that everybody can appeal to. There's this thing, if you try to appeal to everybody, you wind up appealing to nobody.
Mhm.
So at least mentally, you want to have an idea and I'm not suggesting that you compromise your own principles and paint just for a group of people. But regardless of what your art or work is, there are people out there who feel the same way you do. There are people out there who are predisposed to like what you're doing and are basically predisposed to of course buying something. So that's why they also make it the more focused you are, it makes it very, very easy to market to those people because you know who they are, you know what they like, you know where they are, and you can really not only can you tailor your message, but it saves you tons of time. You know, you're not wasting time coming up with stuff that nobody's looking at, and you're not spending hours and hours and hours trying to come up with brilliant ideas. It's almost like I like to say marketing is a conversation. So it's a bunch of people you're having a conversation with. It's like talking to your old friends. So that makes it a lot easier. Now, they also probably know people who think the way they do. So it also helps with referrals. So you sort of get a viral vibe going as I mean, it takes a while to get it started, but once you do, it puts you ahead of the game. Does that
Right.
answer? Right?
Yeah, thank you. And with visual identity, that
Yeah.
can be like it can be your work, like your
Uh-huh.
work might have a certain look to it,
Right.
but it might also, if your work doesn't, and your work is very varied, it could be like your logo or, some certain colors
Right.
or fonts you always use,
Yes.
correct?
Right. Yeah, I'll get into that, how to create that
Okay.
later. But but I have to say, I mean, I did a lot of research for this, and a
Yeah.
lot of the artists I found basically you key off of their work.
Okay.
Uh, but you key off your work in different ways. But basically, it starts with, in a way, it's the artist advantage. Like if I'm selling coffee, coffee is coffee. But if I'm selling paint, your brand is your product. So it sort of
Right.
makes it easy in a sense because you have a place to start with.
Right, exactly. It's different for art. So we've got some questions. Because I know you've got a big presentation, do
I
you
can talk
want
about it.
everyone to hold the questions till the end?
Well, what are give me a question.
I think we have to choose one or the other and we're in.
All right, yeah, okay. Well, let me keep going. If
Okay, yeah, because
you're
I
gonna
know you're going to come
file,
back to this too.
if
So
you're
if
gonna
everyone
file
can
it,
like write your questions down
right?
and then we'll get
Yes,
them all at the end, okay?
because what
But I
I
get
have
to
to
ask
say,
questions.
no, that's fine. You're the moderator. You get to ask questions. No, frankly, what happens a lot of times is as I'm doing this, the questions get answered.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
let me
Exactly.
run through this.
Okay.
So crafting your unique statement basically is at the heart of this. Now, the number one reason you're crafting a statement is to prove to people that you're not a robot.
Mm.
That may sound unusual, but basically that's what everybody's worried about now, that they're not talking to a real person. So you want people to know that you're not like a bunch of artists in a basement somewhere in Moldavia, cranking out artwork. You're an actual person. You have a studio, you have your paintings, you have a point of view. You basically, so I'd like to say you want to start with something about your life. So even before we get to the artwork, what is your life about? A little bit about your bio. Where did your artistic venue come from? So there are questions such as this, where did you grow up? Where did you go to school? What are your milestones? How's your family? These sort of personal, you don't have to get very personal, but just get personal enough so that people, again, these are touch points. These are areas where people can, relate to you. They may have a similar story as you do. So it's sort of, or believe in the same cause as you do. So it's really all leads up to why you became an artist. You want to get
Right,
into
that's great. And I would say don't do all of those,
no,
pick
no,
the most
no.
interesting one or two that
Right, yeah,
relates to your work or draws people in.
right. But the point is to start is to think about yourself.
Yeah,
You're not just a painting machine, you're a human. So think about, so then you want to go, what sets you apart? What inspires you? So again, you take a few minutes to think about these questions related to your art. Why do you make art? What subjects do you prefer? What are your goals? What inspires you? And actually make a list. Make a list of words or items that inspire you or got you into the art game, in the first place. Now, as far as themes go, what is your art about? And these are some possible themes, human identity, what is it to be human in the 21st century? Something about your life, art as social activism. this is a friend of mine. She's a sculptor. Her name is Vinnie Bagwell. She she and I worked on a public art initiative called the Enslaved Africans Rain Garden. And it was a collection of five larger than life bronzes that celebrated the lives of slaves who lived in Westchester County during the 17th century. So and that's basically all of her artwork is
Mm.
relates to African American history. She's been called upon to help dedicate slave cemeteries. She's done sculpture of very famous African Americans, Frederick Douglass, among them. So that's basically her. All of her art, which for her, her artwork is a calling. It's not just art. It's something she literally thinks it's something that God wants her to do, and that basically what fuels her. But you can keep going. You're something about the body, the human form may interest you, or it could be something as simple as a color. Picasso had a blue period where everything he did was monochromatic, and that was so. Whatever gets you going is suitable. So you want to basically again determine the principles. Once you've gone through that exercise, you want to start writing some stuff down. So basically, it sort of rings true, and basically, you want to write an artist statement. And the stuff I looked up suggested three different paragraphs. A paragraph about who you are, a paragraph about your specifics of your artwork. What is your medium? What is your technique? And then a third paragraph about uh, the work itself. Why is it you do what it is you do? What is it? So actually, as an exercise, I've never done this before, but as an exercise, I did this for me. And this might be a little bit long, but the gist of it is, I grew up in the South Bronx. I grew up in New York City. I got very interested in history early on. And for me, art was a way to understand history. I started copying paintings out of books and stuff like that in order to understand, what the American history was all about. As I got older, I developed a love for New York City, and it always sort of bothered me that a lot of American culture seems to be rooted in rural areas in the Midwest. They seem to ignore the urban origins which is interesting because all the money to run the country comes from the cities. So, but as far as American mythology goes, we're all a bunch of farmers living in Nebraska. So basically, I mostly work in acrylics because I like the flexibility. It can use in watercolor, it can mimic oils, you can use it as an impasto. So it's something that gives me a lot of flexibility. And again, as far as your artwork itself, I'm basically aiming to connect my audience with my personal love for the city in general and urban life in particular. So I've never done any of this. So this has given me something to do now, since talking to Krista, I've sort of gotten the itch to get back into painting. So this has sort of given me a direction, which is sort of, so, I didn't want to borrow somebody else's. So this is where I'm about. So defining your target market. Okay, this is the fun part. Now, I mean, you have to do a lot of research, but I would also start with if you're selling any art now, even if you've only sold two paintings, who bought those? Who are those people? Who are their friends? If you haven't sold any, who is giving you some sort of a positive feedback? Not counting relatives. Okay, family members don't count. But if people see your art, they say they like it, whatever it is. So you want to start there. Google is a wealth of information, and Google is actually sort of integrated a very, very strong AI component, which is amazing what it comes up with. I mean, so I would also just lean on Google, be very imaginative with your searches. And then as Krista suggested, look up these people on social media. You may also want to look up other artists on social media and see who's commenting on their art. If you find somebody whose art is sort of similar to yours, see who's commenting on their art and then try to look into what their demographics are. So the demographics are, I skipped a step here, but the demographics are basically characteristics of your target audience. Let me get into the next. And again, email marketing is it's a great way to reach a large audience, but again, it's very, very targeted. Also the best thing about email marketing is you get results. You can see who opened what, who clicked on what. So you really get a really, really clear sense of what's working, who those people are. and you can go after more of those kind of people. So in my business, we talk about demographics a lot, and these are just a handful of the kind of things you can look at. You want to do age, obviously how much money they have, are they educated? Not only do they have money, but are they wealthy? Apparently, people who only make like people who only have $4 million will buy art because they like it. Wealthy people tend to buy art as investments, so that's may not be the place for an emerging artist until you sort of catch fire somewhere. But that's sort of to keep in mind, who you want. And the other thing, the interesting thing is, that I've heard this in several other fields, is millennials are really big in basically buying creative stuff. I have a client I'm working with who's an interior designer, and her best client is a millennial, yeah, who paid her in cash. So he's obviously doing very well. Uh, so one of the other ways to get your hands around this is to create what we basically call a buyer's persona. So take those elements I just talked about, and maybe after doing a little research, you start creating basically fake people, so that as you're doing your marketing material, you have something in mind, and you can do a number of these for different categories. But it's a lot easier for you to relate to this than it is a sheet of numbers. So it sort of humanizes your target audience. And again, as you're researching people, as you find people either on social media or wherever, you can sort of slot them into these buyer personas, so that you start building up a little crowd of these things. And again, it makes your target audience as real as possible in your head. Losing them already. Okay, so where do collectors buy art? That was an earlier question. Where they go? Most of this stuff is happening online. Increasingly, more and more. I think that's what I've discovered. I don't know if Chris has come up with other information, but a lot of the information I came up with was there's a lot of online galleries. I've mentioned a few here. And I will make this information available to anybody once we're done. So don't drive yourself crazy, taking notes unless there's something that really hits you. There are private collectors. Most of them are millennials. So most of them are very active in social media. They're online. Obviously, selling art yourself directly on your website is another place. Driving people to your website in order to buy art is another option. And there's a category of people they call art advisors, which was new to me. And they basically advise companies and those wealthy individuals I mentioned before as to what to buy. So if you can get on their radar, a lot of collectors are looking for emerging artists. They want to have a unique collection. They want to have stuff nobody else has. So the art advisor, might be an avenue. Now, all of these can be tough nuts to crack, but nothing's going to happen if you don't try. So you just have to keep putting stuff out there until, again, we're not talking about mass marketing. You just need to hit with a handful of key people who can open a bunch of doors for you. So that's sort of the same thing in my business.
That's a
I
great
did
list. That's a really great list.
so I did look into galleries, and as far as physical galleries are, you need to see what kind of art are they buying or showing. Is it something compatible with what you're doing? You just don't want to go to any gallery. And again, we're talking about targeting. The key to all this is targeting. And by targeting, I mean, again, finding people and maybe even organizations who are already where you are. You're not really looking to convince people who are doing something completely different. You're always looking for people who are predisposed to doing business with you. That's the entire point of the exercise. So this is the other fun part, developing your visual identity. So you want to develop something that's recognizable, but that's also tied to you. And it's something that visually represents you and your art. So what is the advantage of that? Because people tend to be visual. It's quicker to read pictures than it is to read words. And once you have something recognizable out in the marketplace, your target audience or the people you're already doing business with will recognize you immediately. Starbucks doesn't really have to do a lot of advertising. They just have to, that little cup with their logo on it tells everybody that there's a Starbucks in the neighborhood. But I did that once exactly. I was on vacation, and we were looking for a Starbucks, and we saw somebody with a cup that had the green logo on it. So we stopped them in the street and said, "Where did you get that?" and it was like 3 blocks in some kind of direction. So that's how powerful the logo is. Um, right, okay. There was something else, but I forgot what it was. So anyway. So the first step in creating a visual identity is a fun little, it can be fun, called a mood board. And I like to refer to a mood board as brainstorming with pictures. So you basically, I would also recommend you create more than one. Maybe you have one, maybe you have one of those artists who has several different types of art. Maybe you do prints and you do painting and you do, and maybe you have exhibits. There's just different facets of your art and your business. You may want to create some sort of a, doesn't have to be a completely different visual identity, but it's basically maybe you don't want to lump everything into the same, container. So physically, a mood board can either be totally digital, could be something you just like a Pinterest page or a Google document, or it could be a physical board, like a piece of cardboard, foam core, whatever, a cork board that you can pin things up on. Whatever it is, you want to make sure it's easy to change and easy to look at. Oh, I skipped. So what do you put on your mood board? Well, you sort of work on your logo and your signature. You can put up samples of other people's logos. You can put up pictures that inspire you. Maybe you want to use them as a jumping point for your logo. You want to get into colors. What are the colors you want to use in your marketing? Fonts. You want to look at typography. If you're not familiar with typography, this would be a good time to sort of play around with some font pairings. Obviously, your images, the images you want to showcase on your website, and then any other material that inspires your artwork. There could be photos, could be three-dimensional objects, could be little scribbles. They don't have to be by you. They can be by other people. They don't even have to be related to art at all, but anything that sort of sparks your imagination. So you want to put all these in one place or maybe several places where they're easy to look at. And the other advantage is you can look at them all together. So you get an overall sense of what they're like. So collecting images, of course, is the most fundamental part of this. And I went over a lot of this before, collect them from anywhere. Now I got some samples here. We can go over the one on the right. That's a very like designy mood board. That's like what a corporate designer would do for corporations. And as you can see, it involves fonts, it involves colors, involves images, involves words, adjectives. There's a menu there. There's language. So it's basically every communication aspect of that particular company is in one place. So you can see how they work or don't work together. The other ones are definitely for artists. Obviously, they're a little bit looser, but as you can see, one of them, the one on the far left, we have some scribbled notes. In fact, the color palette is just paint swatches, and it's whatever the particular artist, whatever inspired them. So these are, again, there's no rules. They're very easy to put together, and it's a very, very changeable. So it's a really great place to start. We're developing your own visual language. So I
Love
collected
that.
a few of some famous artists, just so you get a sense of where. So obviously there's a Picasso. Now, obviously Picasso did not do his own mood board. This is like for some Picasso organization. Um, but I just think it's interesting that the two of them are very different. They're two different styles. Picasso had a number of different styles. So, the one on the top is sort of his Cubist period, Cubist style, and the one at the bottom is the one he did like early, like in maybe the 20s and 30s. As you can see, there's definite color palettes. There's definite uses of typography. There's a lot of different elements that are used together. Ditto for Warhol. I mean, the Warhol mood board is basically very Warholian, if you were. And then I sort of got interested in just Banksy, who's basically a graffiti artist. But he's like the ultimate graffiti artist. But I find it interesting that he does all this stuff basically overnight, and it's basically he's got like a little army of Banksy guys, and it's all stencils. But again, it's if you're doing a book or something on Banksy, the mood board is a good place to start. So even if you're doing a book about yourself, this is always a great place to start any sort of visual project. So to sum up what we've just gone through, your personal brand is a combination of your artist statement, a consideration of your target market, and the development of your visual identity. So once you've got those sort of under your belt, we move on to implementation, which is basically bring it into the real world. This stuff is great in your head, but it's really not doing you a lot of good if it's only between your ears. You really want to get it out there where other people can see it. So implementation, how do we do that? Basically, use your art to sell your art. So like what I mean by as an artist in the marketplace, you actually have an advantage. It may not seem that way every day, but you sort of have an advantage over people who are only selling products. So let's look at some logos. So basically the logo is a sort of the basic unit of your brand. It's almost an icon that's immediately recognizable to future and current customers. Now, as an aside, again, I did a lot of research for this. Very few artists I read into have logos. A lot of them just use a straight type treatment, or maybe they use a variation of their signature, but very few of them actually develop a symbol. So let's see what we have. So this is Keith Haring. Keith Haring is unfortunately died of AIDS in the 80s, but he had a very distinctive style. He was a graffiti artist, and I mean he literally started as a graffiti artist uh, in order to draw attention to his art. And sort of like Banksy, he would do like these wall murals, or what he would do is hit that little figure, the figure with the lines around the crawling figure. He would leave that all over New York City. So after all, people were asking, who's doing this? Who is this guy? Is this a commercial? Is it what? So he basically created a name for himself virally. Before the internet, before any sort of this electronic stuff, he created a word of mouth brand for himself by leaving his little symbols, everywhere.
That's
Uh,
fantastic. Can I interrupt for a second?
yeah, sure.
Just I wanted to brag. I've talked to everyone how I used to run a print studio, and we were actually able to do a project with Keith Haring before he
Oh, that
passed.
must have been interesting.
Yeah, super cool. And when you're talking about logos,
Yes.
uh, every print shop, and I'm not talking about Giclées, but you could probably do the same with Giclées. Every print shop, every print publisher has what they call a chop.
Yeah.
And they've done this for hundreds of years. It's basically a symbol that you emboss into the paper to say this was printed at our studio. And there are a few artists that we worked with who had printmaking backgrounds.
Hmm.
But even as painters or as printers, they would use their own version of a chop, a symbol. But it wasn't a lot, but it was kind of a cool thing when an artist has a
It is. Yeah.
logo. Yeah.
Right. So this is our two from two ends of the spectrum here. The first, the AD is Albrecht Dürer. Albrecht Dürer was
Mm,
a genius printmaker during the
there we go.
Renaissance. This might be the first logo. I'm really not sure. I haven't really researched that much. But he put that on, like you said, a chop. He put that on everything he did had that on it. So he was maybe one of the first guys to consciously brand himself. Uh, Basically because he thought he was nobody was better than him. So he wanted people to be able to I guess recognize his work as opposed to his competitors. And interesting enough, the Renaissance, it was a very very competitive art environment. There was
Really?
Yes, there was a
Uh,
lot of artists. They were competing for patrons, competing for
right.
sales. It was very competitive. These guys had large studios. They hired hundreds of artists. There was a thing we were watching just the other day on the Vatican, and the narrator was going through the Vatican, pointing out gorgeous paintings from people we never heard of. You know, they just had very complicated multisyllabic Italian names, but I had no idea any of these guys were. But clearly, I mean, they're doing canvases that are like taking up yards and yards of space. I mean, these weren't small painting. These were like major undertakings. So clearly, there was a market for this stuff. So that's just kind of got. So on the other end of the spectrum is Peter Max. Peter Max was a printmaker, very, very popular in the 60s and 70s, um, and very psychedelic. I don't know if anybody remembers the psychedelic period, but a lot of color, uh, simple shapes. He was sort of the master of this. In fact, he was usually accused of, like we said before, of doing stuff that's so simple anybody could have done it. But he was getting like millions of dollars for this stuff. And again, he caught on virally initially for his prints, and then he started to get some very large corporate accounts were just again increased his fame. So sort of again the two ends of the artistic spectrum, but they share the commercial aspect as far as it goes. Now the other option for your logo is a signature. So Picasso obviously had a very recognizable, definitive signature. In fact, it's just shapes. It's almost a Picasso paint. It's almost cubist, it's almost a Picasso painting. And what also strikes me about this is the energy here. This is something that, regardless of what size it is, it's going to jump off the page. So, and that's how we identified his work, just by the simple signature. The other signature one is Banksy. And what I find interesting here is the second one, which clearly was done the way he paints. It's done with a template and a can of spray paint. So in a way, the second one is a lot more accurate than the first one, but the first one is the cleaner one. So, he managed to get his art into his signature with the second one. So the third option, for if you really want some sort of a symbol or logo, the third option is to basically take a representative piece of your artwork and turn it into like a tile, or turn it into almost a symbol that you can apply anywhere, and people will know it. Again, these are two very recognizable pieces of art. Starry Night is everywhere, and poor Vincent, is sort of a icon of the tortured artist. Anyway, I don't want to. And again, we get back to the Warhol with everything he did was an icon to begin with. So, you could almost take the soup can and just put his name at the bottom, and it would suffice as far as any sort of a logo goes. So we get to the main event and your branding of experience, which is your website. So your website is where you showcase your artwork, you sell your art. The other two things to keep in mind about your website is it's where you establish your brand. I like to call it the center of your marketing universe, because it's also the only part of the internet you own. You don't own any of your social media sites. Facebook likes to change its algorithm, without notice. So suddenly something you think is looking one way is looking a completely different way, and you have no control over that whatsoever. Or you can have something like Twitter, which is now X, which is basically a mess. So, if you were basic, I don't advise clients to just lightly go onto Twitter like I may have before, because of that change. But again, you had no control over that change. Some guy decides to buy it and you're out of luck. So that's why your main goal has to be put into your website. I have had people say over the years that websites were obsolete, but again, for this particular reason, they're never going to be obsolete. So let's take a look at site. There's the two, regardless of what you're doing with your website, there are the two most important areas or section are your homepage and your gallery. So if you do nothing else, you want to basically make sure that those two pages are working. Let's just take a closer look. This is a very interesting artist. I have some samples of her at the end of this. This is her homepage. Now, first of all, I really love the way she just didn't put a picture or put an image on the homepage. She put a photo she basically made an image of her working on the image. So it sort of personalizes it a lot. It's also a play on a very famous Norman Rockwell painting. Norman Rockwell was an American illustrator and painter from like sometime in the 20s up to probably the 70s or something. And created a lot of iconic images. And one of his most iconic paintings was him painting his own self-portrait. So what I wanted to point out about the homepage, this is basically how you would structure any homepage. You want the logo or the name in the upper left-hand corner. That's like the most valuable piece of real estate in the marketplace, is that upper left-hand corner. It's the first, because it's the way we read, it's the first place everybody looks once they get to your website. I noticed about her navigation in the middle there is divided into some definite sections. It's not just, homepage, about me, here are my pictures. She's got drawings, she also does prints, which are for sale. She has information about her exhibits. She has a lot of press and so forth. So this is a very easy way to navigate her as an artist and a person. This is a close look at one of her gallery pages. And as the title suggests, these are all photos or pictures rather paintings. Actually, they're paintings. As realistic as they look, they're all paintings of a specific theme. So again, she's not taking her paintings and just lumping them into a gallery and hoping that you sort of find something you like. She sort of structured the gallery according to what her assignments were, which again is giving people who are predisposed to do business with you, giving them a hint of what they may want to look at. So you want to, the key to a successful website is leading the viewer to where you want them to go without them realizing it. So there's a little sleight of hand involved here.
That's
Other
nice.
important things, what?
That's nice. I like that. That's
Yes,
absolutely true. You want to
right.
take, you want them to go where you want them to go.
You want to
You
take
want it
them
to
on a
make
journey,
sense. Yeah, you don't
right?
want them to
Without
go there and get lost because it's too overwhelming and they'll just leave.
they'll leave. They'll leave. Once people, right? What is it? They'll just they'll just go away. So the other important pages are, the about page. You want people to know about you, your artistic vision, and stuff like that. You want to basically have a way to contact you and sign up for your email list. Even if you don't have one or have an email going out, you want to start building the list as soon as possible. Uh, and obviously, you want to, if you're into e-commerce, you want to make that as easy as possible. Now, you can either do the e-commerce yourself on your website, or there are third-party sites that'll help you with it. So, uh, so let's go look at some portfolio samples. This is sort of interesting. So again, it's home pages and gallery pages, and the different way artists approach this. This guy actually Smex has a very interesting logo, has an interesting name too. I don't even know if that's his name. I don't know what Smex means, but I do know it's very distinctive, and I'm probably never going to forget about it. And what he has on his homepage is a slideshow. So he runs through a series of pictures on his slide, and you can sort of direct the slideshow. The second one is Aria H. So again, her homepage is a little bit different. It's a photo of one of her paintings in a gallery. So it's as though you're visiting the gallery and you're looking at her work. So that's sort of the experience that she's mimicking here. Gentleman, believe it or not, the gentleman on the left there, those are paintings. He's the ultra photorealistic painter. And I just assumed he was a photographer when I first saw him, but anyway. And then the woman there on the right hand side, and I have some other samples of her work. That's a very unusual way of arranging your homepage. She has the navigation front and center. She basically has divided the page in two. She sort of starts the gallery on the homepage. And I think the other reason she did this, as I'll show you later, is this is a page that's also designed to look good on mobile, which brings me to these guys here. So this is from an artist platform called Fazo, Fine Artist something or other. I forget, I can supply with that later. This is one of their templates, and obviously they're selling the fact that their template will work on any platform, desktop, laptop, tablet, cell phone. That's incredibly important because everybody on Earth has one of these or maybe more than one of these. Increasingly, people are using their cell phone to more than their larger platform. So you need to make sure you look good in every conceivable place. And a lot of the web builders will accommodate that. A lot of the web builders make that as easy as possible. So I just as an aside, I do have a list of web builders. I didn't include them here because I think we're dealing mostly with concepts and not necessarily how to, but there are things like Wix, Squarespace, something called Weebly. Those are the three most popular ones. They all make building a website. You don't even need to do any coding. They have templates that are ready made. All you have to do is drop in your material. So, if I was, I build websites for a living. So for me, it's a different approach. But if that's not what you're doing for a living, you really don't want to spend weeks and weeks and weeks building a website. And you may not want to spend thousands of dollars having someone do it for you. And there's no bigger waste of money than a cheap website. So investigating some of these ready-made platforms would definitely be the way to go. So now we move into social media, which is sort of like the second wing of this. So basically, like I said, it's a conversation about your brand with like-minded consumers and artists. So look at it that way. You're taking part in or starting an ongoing conversation about your work. So why is it social media? Again, it's a great way to extend your brand, drive traffic to your website, collect email addresses, and in general, build your reputation. It's a great way to connect with potential buyers and other artists. You can build a community, and you want to build a community of fans and followers. Again, that golden part of your niche market. Millennials, again, the fastest group of art collectors, are heavily into social media. A lot of them start the day going to Instagram. They're on Instagram themselves. They're doing short videos. I mean, these are basically the cliche of people who are living their life online or millennials. But the good side is a lot of them have a lot of money and a lot of them are into collecting art. And again, browsing or through social media, you get to pick up on trends. You see who else is doing what is the state of the art world, and just what are people are up to in general, which could be very, very useful. So as far as social media platforms go, Instagram is obviously incredibly popular. It's a visual medium. You can do, increasingly, I'm finding artists doing short videos of them and their work. So it's either them creating something or them commenting on a piece of artwork, but video is becoming more and more of an interactive medium. Um, and yeah, let me we have as far as the pro tip here sort of applies to all social. The key to success on social media is consistency. You want to have a consistent voice and you want to have a consistent presence. So you don't want to post, for 3 weeks and then don't do anything for 6 months. That's basically a waste of time. You also want to post, you want to have separate pages for your personal stuff and your professional stuff. People don't need to know about your vacation. They don't need to see your kitty cat pictures. That could be like a whole separate thing. But if you're very serious about sales and building a brand, you need to have social media pages that are dedicated to that. Pinterest is sort of, as I said before, sort of a digital mood board where people can collect. So each one of these pictures represents a separate board. So you can have multiple boards. People will find you. People who are interested in the things you're interested in will find you on Pinterest. Uh, I haven't looked at my Pinterest page in years, and I still get people uh, copying what I put up there or sending me emails asking me about stuff, or sharing. I had a section about the Beatles. So I basically get emails from Beatles fans who just want to reach out to another fan. So one site you may not have thought of was LinkedIn. LinkedIn is primarily a business site. Um, and I'm on LinkedIn a lot because I'm looking for looking for clients. But increasingly artists are showing up on LinkedIn to either meet other artists or to basically sort of ferret out potential customers. But also increasingly especially a lot of the younger artists are approaching this more and more like a business. So yes, they're creative, yes, they're selling art, but they also want to know how to properly conduct this as a business. So that's sort of and there aren't a lot of artists on there yet. So this would be a really good time to get involved because you would sort of stick out a little bit. And then of course there's Facebook, but if only because it's the largest social media platform out there. There are more people on Facebook than anywhere. I think Facebook would be like in the top 10 number of countries if it were a country. So you want to have a presence on Facebook. Facebook is also very, very generous or very compatible with images. It actually works better with images than it does with text. And the other good thing about Facebook, you can have a separate page for your business. You can have a business page. The advantage of the business page is it lets you run ads. Now, Facebook ads are very, very economical and they're very targeted. So it's sort of like the best buy out there as far as promoting yourself. You could spend like $10 a day and reach thousands and thousands of people, all in the demographic you suggested. And you can select the demographic by the items I showed you before. You can go by age, a geographic location, financial situation, or also by interest. People are interested in art, or maybe you'd like to paint horses. You can send their ad to people who like horses. So there's a lot you can do with Facebook ads once you get your business page going. So it's just, again, there's like billions of people on Facebook. It's sort of there's no reason not to be there. So there's other media considerations. This is where I sort of put email marketing, although it should be a section on its own, but this thing was getting too big, to be honest with you. So I had to put them somewhere else. But the thing about email marketing is, again, you can promote your work, drive sales, you build relationships. It's also, again, highly targeted. You know who's opening your emails, you know who's ignoring your emails, so you know the type of person you need to be looking for more of. It's totally customizable, so whatever your brand identity is, you can apply it to your email. Although lately I'm seeing fewer and fewer branded emails for some reason. I'm seeing more sort of like generic emails, and the branding is more in the image. But that's more of a personal preference. So the most important thing you can do is build your email list. And a number of ways of doing that. Call to action on your website. Wherever I go, I have my business cards with me. I'm inviting people to sign up for my list. You want to make sure your your thing works on mobile. I take the same content and I put it in my blog. I put it on my social media pages, and I send it out on my emails. So there's a certain amount of overlap, but not everybody sees everything all the time. So to make sure that everybody I know sees my stuff, I basically hit those three platforms simultaneously, ideally once a week, but life gets in the way. So I want to give an example of this is an example of a campaign I did for a film festival. It's a combination of social media and email marketing. And not for anything, but this particular film festival was dying before I took over. There was nobody actually running the digital marketing part of the festival. So I took over social media and email marketing. I combined them together. This is basically separate campaigns for separate movies. And, we started filling the house, and basically I gave them behind the scenes information. I played around with the images a little bit, but the key, what I did is I had a separate, we would do 8 films on 8 consecutive Sundays, and I created 8 separate marketing campaigns. So in each case, I never sold the festival as a whole. I basically sold the individual movies because I wanted to appeal to people who would actually go and see those movies, And the advantage here is you get to see these movies on the big screen. You're not instead of like, on your television. But again, each one of these movies would have a separate target audience. So I sort of really zeroed in on them. Blogging is great for artists. It basically gets your ideas out there. If you do it enough, you get recognized as a thought leader, which gives you and your work additional credibility. Blogs, again, are great for networking. You can monetize your blog by selling ads. Google has a number of ways you can do that. And you can repurpose your content. The other thing to keep in mind about all this social media and blog and whatever is you don't always have to create new content. You can repurpose existing content. You can even leverage other people's content as long as you properly give them credit. You can always say, here's a great article I saw on, whatever, painting icebergs. So, it's not necessarily what you're doing, but you're bringing that information to your network. And what happens in that case, that gets back to the thought leadership angle, is you start being recognized as an information source. So beyond your own artwork, you get recognized as someone who really knows the art market, who really knows your particular niche, and people can come to you with questions. They can come to you for information. They can come to you for reasons other than just buying your art. So obviously, every time you touch somebody, they're a potential customer, but this gives people an additional reason to reach out to you without having to worry about, if I don't want to buy anything, So video marketing I've seen increasingly more artists using video. Video in general, draws like crazy. YouTube is the second largest search engine on the web, and the third most visited site. And it's basically like you're having, again, an in-person conversation. You do all these wonderful things. You're increasing sales, you're driving traffic. I also found a great thing to do is to interview customers. It's almost like a video blog. where you interview a customer, someone who bought your artwork. You can talk about your art, you can talk about your niche, you can talk about whatever. You can interview other artists and basically sort of piggyback on their particular network. So there's a lot of interesting things you can do with video, and for whatever reason, people are always watching video. Now, the other angle on the thing is merchandising. I don't know if anybody's into merchandising yet, but I found these interesting items. In particular, the Picasso bobblehead, I think was basically it's basically up there. Van Gogh stuff is everywhere. You know, my wife and I took a vacation to Provence last year, and Van Gogh is and wherever you go, there's Van Gogh stuff. So Van Gogh is merchandise like crazy. Banksy stuff actually lends itself for merchandising, but whatever it is you're doing, there's always some. I mean, it's sort of it's just another way to get yourself out there. And if somebody buys a mug or whatever it is from you, that's going to live in their house. Regardless of the painting, whatever piece of merchandising they bought or give away as a present is going to live in somebody's house for a while, almost as a constant reminder of you. So wrapping this up, I want to just show a couple of branding samples. So this is the woman who did Zara Form who did the icebergs. So these are the pages we looked at before. Inside, she does some interesting things. Her about page is a video of her creating a painting. And if you watch the video, you can see that she changes hairstyles and clothes during. So obviously, this is a painting that took her a long time to paint, and you're sort of watching her at work. The other thing about her that was interesting is she worked on a project with NASA, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, on icebergs, which is, I guess, why she paints icebergs, or maybe she started painting them first, whatever. But she has involvement with this on a scientific level, which again informs her artwork. Now, as far as her selling her artwork, she uses a third-party site called ArtStar. And there's obviously her bio, her photo, and then examples of her artwork that are for sale. I find it interesting that they have prices, actually. I didn't find a lot of places that actually quoted prices. Usually there are two schools of thought. There's the one fear that if the price will make people reluctant to touch base with you. But on the other hand, putting prices up there sort of screens out people who are never going to buy from you in the first place. So, that's sort of, if they think you're too expensive or whatever, you really don't need to hear from them. So this is, the next one is a woman, we saw her website a minute ago, Leah Gardner. She also does some interesting things. So that's her homepage. Her about page is sort of autobiographical. You can see her taking her own picture. It's her gallery page. It's interesting when you read about her, she says she's a self-taught artist. She does a painting every day. She obviously has a very, very consistent style. The subject matter sort of varies a little bit, but it's a very, very, that's her. She also did something, she sort of tried turning her signature into something a little bit more personal by doing it almost as a small painting. What I found really interesting is she included a frequent askingly questions page, which has basically questions about her artwork, about what's the best way to present her artwork. Can we read some of these? Maybe just see.
Kind of hard just for us to see.
Well, how long does it take to do a painting? What influenced your art? How did you get into art? Where
It's
did
a
you
great
learn?
idea.
Yeah, so basically it's all about her, and then there's other questions there about, buying her paintings as a prior, how to buy, how to take care of them, how do they come, what mediums do you work with, what paper do you use, do you sign your work, how are originals shipped, what do you recommend for framing? So, obviously she's had these questions. She gets these questions on a regular basis. So in addition to rather than answering them one at a time, she's basically using them as a way to extend her brand. She's very active on social media. So that's what her site looks like on mobile. If you look at her site on your cell phone, that's what you can see. She's on Instagram. That's her Instagram page, as you'll notice. A lot of those are videos. This is her Pinterest page. Now her Pinterest homepage does mix some personal items with her art. But hey, I guess it's working for her. But this is her art page. on Pinterest, and I'm just basically ending with this. If we're talking about merchandising, you know, I, Warhol was pretty good at merchandising, but after he died, it sort of took off. So basically, there we go. This is the site, Clicks for Ticks.
Mhm.
Now I have a service that I'm providing to attendees here. It's called a brand scan.
Mhm.
And basically it's something I've done this with the Krista, though I haven't delivered it yet because I was working on this. But basically, it's an in-depth interview about your business, your brand, what you're all
Mhm.
about, and about where you want to go, where you are now. Is your brand obsolete? If you don't have a brand, what should it be? You get a detailed report that lays all this out for you, along with a list of deliverables and next steps.
Mhm.
And it basically is sort of like a roadmap for success.
Okay.
Now the cost, now if you go further with me, the cost of the brand scan is then applied to whatever additional work we do. So it's almost like a deposit. It's
Oh,
not
okay.
a standalone. So what I'm pleased to announce is basically the regular price of the brand scan is $500, but I'm going to give everybody here a 20% discount. So that's basically $400 for the brand scan. And it's a great way to get started. I've had clients who didn't fully realize what their business was about. So
Mhm.
the three things I try to do is basically focus your mission, focus on what your services are, focus on who your target audience is. We go into the
Mhm.
target audiences, and then basically how do you optimize your content to appeal to your target audience. So
Yeah, I've done a lot of that work already with Marie Forleo's course on the B School. So a lot of what you talked about, like knowing your purpose and knowing your target audience, I've already done that. But
yes.
your presentation today really defined what exactly target audiences are good for in terms of. I really appreciate it. You did a great job.
No,
I learned
thank
a lot today.
Oh,
So
great. So like
yeah.
what I found is, so it's basically like me doing this level of presentation for you and your business.
Mhm.
And what I have
Mhm.
found is we uncover things that you thought you knew, but you don't know, or we uncover things that are not written down anywhere.
So you're
Right?
sort of like an artist psychologist.
Actually, that's exactly how yes, I do that with my regular clients. I have I have this image in my head because in my regular business, I would get called in on a lot of problem projects.
Yeah.
And I always refer to myself as Dr. Design. So show up, and the first thing I had to do was like calm the client down, you know. So first calm the client down. Second thing was identify the problem, because usually the problem again was not what they thought it was. So
Yeah.
basically, and usual, I mean, sometimes it comes down to they didn't like the color, you know. So
Mhm.
you know, and invariably, like, so I'm always dealing with client feedback, and sometimes a client will say, I hate what you did. And I can, okay, what did you hate about it? You know,
Yeah.
and you sort of drill down till you find out they didn't like the font.
Mhm.
Basically, so that's basically what I do with your business. And then from the brand scan, we didn't create your marketing material but you know the purpose behind the material you're creating. You know, we're not just
Yeah.
creating a pretty website. You know, I mean, I had somebody approach me several months ago. They were going to build my website right before my eyes.
Mhm.
During the meeting, they were going to take my information, and I said, you don't know anything about me or my business. How can you build me a website? It's basically like a postcard, you know. So whatever I do has a business function to it. So and then whatever I do works with everything else. The website works with the social media, works with the email marketing, works with the business card, works with the. So you're basically you're meeting the world as a comprehensive entity, and not
Mhm.
just a bunch of bits and pieces. So,
Oh, okay. Well, thank you very much.
oh, you're welcome.
That's
Yeah.
great.
Okay.
Thanks, Michael. I think Nicola's got a raised hand. Nicola, do you want to
Oh
unmute
yeah.
yourself?
Hi, Krista. Hi, Michael. Thanks
Hi.
for that presentation. That was really awesome.
Thank you.
Really inspiring websites. Really nice choices. Thanks for that too.
Mhm.
I've got an issue. I'm not really sure that there is any advice to give, but maybe you'll have some idea.
Mhm.
I was commissioned for a project that is going to take me years.
Mhm.
I'm already a year and a half, nearly 2 years into it. But in the meantime, it's sort of like a non-disclosure situation. So, until the project is finished and it becomes a thing, I can't really talk about my work on
Yeah.
social media. I can't share anything. And I don't know, I'm kind of turning into a social media ghost. I'm not participating
Well,
in
that, yeah, no,
exhibitions.
you don't want to do that. I mean, that's the tough one.
Yeah.
You sort of need to find like a left-handed way, to, you know, I mean, has this project taken most of your time during the year and a half?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's very, very intense. I mean, I suppose the question really is, if I have to think about what I'm actually asking, is um, to what degree, if it hasn't been specified, because it hasn't, it's just like, let's not spoil the project by exposing it too soon.
Right.
To what degree should someone in my position be non-disclosing?
Well, if you didn't sign, there's two ways of looking at this. If you didn't sign an NDA, if there's no paperwork involved,
Yeah,
then legally you can basically do what you want. However, you then risk losing the client.
yeah,
I mean, what you might do is at some point approach the client and just say, maybe some of the beginning stages that, or maybe there's a portion of this. They're now that you've been working on it for a year and a half, there might be a portion of it that they wouldn't mind.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
you can always, I mean, frankly, I mean, you can always show stuff to someone, like if someone comes to your house, like if something is just, on a very personal level,
yeah, yeah. No, of course I do
always
that because
share
I
a
think
link with somebody if it's just one to
yeah,
one. Hopefully, they'll never find out about it,
yeah.
And if they do, you basically just apologize a lot, I mean, I don't know how seriously they're taking this. And again, I don't know anything about the project. I don't know if it's,
But we're all
but
dying to know now, of course.
Well,
yeah, right, exactly. I mean, there's always a way around this stuff. You just have to be sort of cagey, but you don't want to do
Yeah.
anything that they might find easily.
yeah. Well, I mean,
Have you
it's
been
not like
signing
I
any papers?
have a huge, and I haven't signed anything, and I don't have a huge following, but I'm becoming really isolated, and it's kind of lonely to be working in a vacuum.
That's not good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I make a suggestion? Is that maybe you post old things? Does that,
It's so different. It doesn't
yeah,
feel
is
like
it?
me
Okay.
anymore. Yeah, yeah.
Well, it's better than nothing, basically. Something is always better than nothing.
And then you
Both.
can launch what you're doing. You could plan a launch for it.
How long, how much time is left to the big project?
Oh, at least 3 years. It's huge.
Wow.
It's an intense amount of work, and ultimately it will involve a lot of other people and huge investment on the client side. So, yeah, I can't.
I don't know I mean, if you have a really good relationship with a client, you might broach the subject very gingerly, without knowing what this is. I don't know. I mean,
So
they
it's
have
not.
to understand. Well, I hope they're paying you well, number one. Number two, uh, they have to understand that you have a life beyond the project.
Yeah, yeah,
Although there was somebody posted on Facebook. No, it was LinkedIn. This guy posted on LinkedIn. He worked for Disney. So he said he didn't even say Disney. He just said he's worked in Orlando for 32 years. And
yeah,
everything he's ever done is covered by a non-disclosure agreement. So he's been drawing little animals and whatever it is he was doing. He can't show anything to anybody, at least not publicly.
yeah,
So if it were me, coming from the Bronx, as I do, I would find a non-public way to share some of this.
yeah, yeah,
That would be that's how I would approach it. Like if
yeah.
I have a client, I mean, are you
It's-
actively looking for new work? That's the other thing. We don't really have the time for new work,
No, no, not for the next
Right.
one.
right? Yeah, so I agree with Krista that just, you want to keep your presence alive any way you can, so that when this thing does happen, you have an audience waiting, they'll be surprised, oh, look what she's been up to,
Yeah,
But I
yeah.
definitely try to keep the audience interested, even if it's personal stuff. You don't want to be completely, incognito.
Yeah.
Because then when you do start being active again, there's not going to be anybody there.
Well, that's the thing. Yeah, exactly.
So,
And,
it's not,
and it's also just as a story that has a lesson to it. A, be careful what you wish for, and B, I used to have a very organized social media practice.
yeah,
I used to use Facebook scheduling tool, the business tool, which was very
right,
useful. I could plan, pre-schedule, like 2 months
yeah,
worth of social media posts ahead of time. It would
yeah.
send it to Instagram at the same time, which is how I got the client in the first place.
Yeah, see, that's what I
Um,
mean.
yeah, but now that I haven't been doing it for so long, I also have now got extreme stage fright all of a sudden. Forgotten what my own voice
Yeah.
sounds like. So it isn't a practice that is good to lose touch with once you've begun it. Try by all means
Yeah.
to carry on.
I just wanted to say thank you, everyone, for being here. Thank you, Michael,
Yes, thank
so
you.
much. It was
Sure.
really a great presentation.
Thank you.